everybody, and thanks again for joining us here on Expanded Perspectives with me, Cam Hale, and of course, as always, the man, the legend of, of water drinking. He has the crate all the time. There's new water. Every time he brings in here, it's ridiculous. Big Fizzy.
How's it going, everybody? Yes, I'm here. Yeah, man, I told everybody knows this. That's a follower of mine.
Bad.
That I started with fizzy water, and then I've transitioned into just regular water. There's new brands. Every time I go into a convenience store, there's 4 or 5 new ones.
And you got to try them now. That's your thing.
I had Chuck Norris water the other day.
How was it?
Wasn't that great, but I had to buy it because it had Chuck Norris on it.
Yeah, it had
right?
Chuck on it.
It's like an OG. Like, he's a legit martial artist. Like, I know everybody back in the day was a big fan of Bruce Lee and all this, but Bruce Lee never competed.
Here we go.
Right? Anybody can look super badass in a movie at fighting. Like, I want to see some real fight. And Chuck Norris actually did compete.
Yeah.
Right? I've heard guys like Gene LaBelle and stuff, they manhandled
Gene LaBelle is
Bruce
legit.
Lee. Let's not forget, Bruce Lee wasn't the best guy.
Here we go.
It's like, I mean, everybody holds him up on this pedestal. It's because he was the first one, right? Back in the movies, back in those days, the Green Lantern and that.
He was pretty awesome, though.
It was awesome as a kid, but I also watched Shaolin Temple Strikes Back, and I thought everybody fought like that, too, when you realize it's all...
I've seen Rawhead Rex,
real,
right? Like, yeah.
That's I'm not a big Bruce Lee fan. I'm a big fan of people who back up what they talk, right? Like Gordon Ryan talks a lot of trash, but guess what, folks? Ain't nobody beat him.
That's right.
Right? Khabib, he talks a lot of trash. No one's beat him.
Actually, he doesn't.
He talks some.
But he's not really trash.
See, I think that's
he's just kind of stating facts, isn't it?
See, that's what I think happened to Connor. Connor was good because he was talking a lot of trash and backing it up. But once you stop, not backing it up,
that payday will make you not care about it anymore.
Listen, I don't even know why he even entertains thoughts.
I'm not hating at all. If they paid me that kind of money.
Well, he sold his whiskey company, Proper 12.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, for big money.
Man, I wouldn't do anything.
That's me. Like, why are you even entertaining? I want to fight Usman or something.
I wouldn't do anything involving the inside of a gym if I had that much money.
I'd go hang out on that big Lamborghini yacht he's got.
All I would do is fish.
Right? He doesn't look like the fisherman.
Beautiful weather fishing. Speaking of all of this, hey folks, thank y'all all so much for everybody that reached out to us during the fires, all that. It wasn't close to us per se here in town, in Weatherford, but it was south of us and west of us, and I've had family displaced by it and everybody. Yeah, so there's been some madness that has gone on out there with all the fires and whatnot. So
crazy brush fires, and the most tragic thing is, like, look, I know losing your home and all that is horrendous, but look, people have insurance. It's like all the livestock that's burned and killed, all these, not just horses, not just cows, sheep, but even wild animals. It's spring.
Yeah.
All the babies were just born. So there's fawns and baby cottontails, everything.
Turkeys,
they're all
everything's
barbecued.
Gone. Yeah.
So, I mean,
if they couldn't get away from it,
it's a bad thing. And then, of course, it was tornadoes the next day.
Yeah, that was pretty touch and go, but it wasn't too bad. Here's what's funny. My daughter called me from College Station. They were getting tornadoes down in that area. Mm-hmm. So she was calling, asking, and I was telling her stuff about it. And then, of course, we just came through Jacksboro. Jacksboro High School got hit by one.
Bad.
It was real bad. Yeah. So, yeah, but lucky nobody was hurt.
Yeah.
How crazy is that? Everybody was in school, but nobody was hurt.
Thank God.
Yeah. That's so wild.
Shocking is, like, because tornadoes are very common. I think they said the average per year in Texas is something like 60. And I think we've already hit more than half of that already this year. You think it would be more popular for, like, elementary schools and stuff like that to have, like, a large underground basement storm shelter area for kids, right? Like, why isn't that just pretty common?
Yeah, you would think.
And even storm cellars, they do exist around here, but almost all of them are from homes built before 1950.
How wild
for whatever
is that?
Reason.
Like, you go to Oklahoma and Kansas, it's normal. Basements, and you start getting into storm shelters and whatnot. Come down here, the same thing. It's like, I would love to have
and you
a storm
see them
shelter.
for sale, like they're just concrete. It almost looks like
yeah.
But I mean, and they're like $8,000. But you'd think they would be more popular. I look at houses every day. I very rarely come across them. And when I do, it's almost always an older home.
I wish I had a basement.
I do too.
Like the full size of my home, like a basement.
Part of it like a wine cellar and stuff that, right? Keep things cool.
That's where you'd keep your gimp.
Yeah.
Down there. And then just all my gaming stuff down there.
I think some of the reason that the older homes also had storm shelters and cellars, or whatever you want to call them, root cellars, is because people were scared. They were using them as fallout shelters as well.
Yeah. My wife's grandmother and her grandparents up in Oklahoma had one right by the front door. You walked out the front door and turned, swung open the big one and walked down and went under the house. there, and that was where the storm shelter, they built the storm, which was odd because it wasn't a basement. It was a storm shelter built and then a home built on top of it.
Yeah, right. Do you remember when we were like in middle school, our friend Pecos had one, but it was decked out and it had like a ham radio in it and stuff, and we would like mess with truck drivers and stuff. Do you remember that? Back in the day, there was no internet, folks. You had to do whatever you could. But I remember he had a decked out storm shelter, and I thought it was awesome. It was like a little play. Yeah,
it was just like a
playhouse.
It was just like your own private hangout for the whole thing.
Yeah, it had electricity in it and everything.
It would say, you need one.
I do.
I need to build one here. I need to dig one and build one.
You might as well. It could be your, slash underground studio,
maybe
your bunker,
when I rebuild
your panic room.
When I rebuild the shop, I build a basement and then build the shop.
Yeah, and you could smell like 3D resin. That's nonstop.
Yeah, right.
Right. Well, let's get into some stories, folks. Now, listen.
Here we go.
I never knew that this is what happens on the show all the time, right? We come across a story or a sighting or something that you never heard of, and then it turns out a lot of other people have seen the same thing. So
everybody's been setting on it because they don't want to sound like the crazy one.
Right. So much like the Glimmer Man, a couple weeks ago, a young lady from Texas wrote in about this trash bag she observed morph into like a duende.
Mm-hmm. Which is the name of my band.
Yeah, Trash Bag Duende. That is
Trash Bag Duendes.
Then the last episode, somebody wrote in, and they too, while driving with their father in Texas, saw a similar thing happen. Well, we just got another one. It says, this is from a guy named George, and it says, "Greetings, guys. I had the same experience with a floating trash bag looking thing. It was on New Year's Eve, 2021. I was outside in my backyard with my dog, and I was waiting for him to do his business when I was looking up, and I saw this white, kind of transparent-looking trash bag floating about 100 feet up in the air, going in a north direction. It was floating in a straight path, not moving like a trash bag would in the wind. At first glance, it looked like a trash bag, but I know it wasn't a trash bag. I don't know how, but I just knew. It happened at night, around 11:30 p.m., and there were some fireworks being popped because of the new year. I don't remember it being windy that night, but whatever it was, man, it certainly seemed odd. This happened in Grand Prairie, Texas. I just wanted to share my experience with you guys. Love the show. Best regards, George." Well, thanks, George. Grand Prairie is not that far from here, folks. It's about 37 miles east of here. I'm up in that area all the time. My brother's a fireman in Arlington, which borders Grand Prairie. This 100 feet up in the air, a white-looking bag this time.
Yep.
Now, we're not saying that this is a duende in bag form. He's just commenting that you had mentioned you saw something that looked like a bag about 100 foot off the ground in the night sky. So
a large bag.
I wonder that this one appeared large. So I wonder
what's going on here.
Is it something trying to camouflage itself, right?
I'm blown away that we're getting more and more from Texas, from like around here. Like,
so far, every one of them. So far, has been in the Texas area. So.
Sorry, y'all, my allergies.
Yeah,
I'm dying with all this wind. Speaking of dying, I got something here, Brad. Of course, I can't pass this up when you start seeing something about upright dogmen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a person, a witness, was apparently stalked and chased through the West Virginia woods, almost mauled by an upright dog man, right? West Virginia. Listen to this. It says a West Virginia man is fishing at his favorite spot when he noticed something disturbing him. The 23-year-old witness had decided to partake. Now, this happened back in 2015 in some early morning fishing. He got up in the middle of the night, made his way through the woods to his spot. It was a very secluded area. He managed to catch 3 fish, and then the sun was beginning to rise. He then received a phone call from his mother asking him to pick her up her medication after he was done fishing. Says that he hung up and was preparing to throw his line back in the water when he noticed that everything around him seemed to get unnaturally quiet. The Oz effect, the silence, right?
Mm-hmm. Always happens.
Says he thought it very odd, but just brushed it off. He threw the line back out, and before long he began to hear water splashing. He asked if anyone was out there, yet there was no reply. He sat listening and tossed his line again. He heard the splashing sound again and surmised that someone was throwing rocks into the water.
Hello?
Yeah.
Is anyone there?
I
can hear you.
He asked whomever it was to stop playing games. He caught another fish, and he goes on to say that he took the fish, placed it aside, and then he heard the sound of snapping twigs. Somebody was walking in the woods, and then it stopped. He again asked if someone was out there and asked them to stop.
Please stop. I'm trying to fish. I just landed my fourth.
Again, he received no reply. Says this continued for several minutes, and then he heard it walking at a more brisk pace, this time much closer to him. Suddenly, whatever it was became visible to the witness for the very first time. He could see one bright yellow eye peeking through the opening in the foliage. The creature then parted the leaves, and the witness observed that it was a gigantic wolf head looking at him.
That's not good.
The witness noted that it looked like a werewolf or that it was something from a horror movie. It proceeded to step out from behind the foliage and walk on two legs to the water's edge. The witness was in shock, dropped his fishing rod, and just watched the creature. In turn, it looked over at him. He described that it had a huge head, bright yellow eyes, massive shoulders, long arms that hung down in front, huge hands with claws on the end of each finger, and dog-type canine legs. Terrified, the witness began backing away, leaving his gear and fishing rod there on the ground. He quickly made his way back to the trail, and he could hear the thing following him. When he stopped, it stopped. And after walking some more, he looked back and observed the creature behind him. It growled at him. In absolute fear, the witness pulled his gun out. It says here he was a licensed gun owner. At that point, I don't care.
Right, yeah.
I don't pull it out, and the guy's like, whoa, 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 whoa. The werewolf's like, can't take a shot at me, bro. You don't have a license, right?
Yeah. It's better to worry about the law or whatever's going to happen later.
License, yeah. When there's a werewolf about, there's going to be gunplay. Says the fella began walking backwards, and at this point, the creature ran off through the grass. He says here, as he watched it as it entered the tree line and began circling back onto the trail from the other side, the witness could now see the creature ahead of him coming in his direction. Sensing he was in great danger, that the creature was definitely intending to attack him, the witness fired his gun not once, not twice, but a total of 3 times. These were warning shots intended to scare off the beast. It did not seem to deter said creature. It continued to walk towards him, so he pointed it at the creature and fired twice. The witness could hear the impact as the bullets connected. The creature stumbled backwards. To the witness, it seemed more angry than hurt. Eventually, the beast got down on all fours and ran off into the woods. The witness made it out of the area. It took him nearly 7 years before he was finally able to discuss what happened.
Wow. I mean, how do you rationalize seeing something like that?
And then firing a shot and it just shaking it off.
Well, it's not the first time we've heard of that.
No. In fact, most of the time, that's all you hear is how they shake it off.
What I like is the detail about he can hear the bullet hit. For those of you that aren't hunters or, gun aficionados, when you are hunting, you can definitely tell a difference when you hit something or when you miss something. You can hear somebody else fire their rifle and you can be like, I can tell they hit something.
Yeah, you can.
It gives a different sound.
Yes.
So that part of the story is like, this guy obviously is an outdoorsman. He's not fronting. He's not faking the funk. He legit.
Yeah.
He's out there. He's landing these bass left and right. The dog man's just curious as to what he's using. I mean, he doesn't know if he's using top water plug. Like, right. What are you using? And this guy gets scared to death and runs off.
Get it rigged up.
Leaves all his fishing gear there.
That's the worst part.
So,
not seeing the dog man, losing your fishing stuff.
Yeah. Do you go back in the woods to try to grab it?
Absolutely not.
You know what? I really liked that Daiwa rod I had, and
man, you know what? It all depends on what combo I had at the time. First of all, I've learned. Here's a little insight y'all may remember. I got chased by a pig one time on a bow hunt years ago and ended up throwing my bow at it. Okay, and I've still got the quiver somewhere where he'd stepped on it and like bent the quiver hood down, all kinds of stuff. But I threw my compound bow at the pig because I panicked. Never throw your weapon at something that's a monster, okay? Never leave anything. So from that moment on, I carry everything. It may have killed me if I hadn't have thrown that fishing rod down and the dog man would have come, but I'd have whipped him with that fishing rod the whole time he was trying to kill me.
Yeah, do you think he was using like a bait caster?
Yes,
do you think
100%.
He was more like ultralight or spinning reel? Like, what do you think this guy's using?
No, this guy's probably spinning reel. I'm thinking where he's at, if he's up in there, like it's probably a spinning reel.
Yeah.
That's what I think anyway.
Check this out. We have this from an interesting story from a listener. It says, hey, I don't wish to share my name because I don't want to upset any friends who are affected by this. I don't know if this is exactly fits your show or not, but twice now in my life, I've had a dream about a person the night that they died.
Ooh.
Now, neither of these people were practically or particularly close to me. The first time was in high school. I had a dream about a kid named Blake. We were not friends or barely even acquaintances. He approached me in my dream, confused to see me. Then the next day at school, the morning announcements came on saying that Blake sadly died in a car accident. This freaked me out. But I told no one, and I kind of forgot about it. That was until last week when the exact same thing happened with my ex-girlfriend from 10 years ago's father. I had a dream where he walked into the room and was confused to see me. It took a second for us to even recognize each other. I woke up thinking, well, man, that was a weird dream. Then I looked on my phone to see a post on Instagram from a friend of my ex-girlfriend saying that her father had died that night. This immediately made me think about the time it happened in high school. I would prefer this never to happen again, and now I'm scared to see anyone in my dreams. MW. Boy, that is weird.
Hey, if you see me or Kyle, reach out. All right? Holla at your boy.
But what a strange thing, right?
That is crazy.
You literally see them in your dream. They see you, and they're like, dude, look confused, or like, what are you doing here? And then they die.
That's so crazy.
Man.
But you know what? It doesn't surprise me, right? With the way this stuff goes, right? Like none of this stuff surprises me anymore. Whenever we hear people that have these kind of like almost like psychic dreams and all these premonitions, none of that stuff really shocks me anymore. Not as long as we've done that. Speaking of shocking, I'm going to take a quick break, folks. And when we get back, I'm going to be telling some stories with some World War II ties, some very strange things that happened with some time slips. Some dogmen, maybe some UFOs, some really odd things that happened in and around World War II, folks. Stick around. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. All right, y'all. Here we go. You're going to have to please bear with me. I have stripped the studio down to almost nothing. I've been repainting and redoing it. I'm setting it up more for more video stuff for YouTube so we can start doing some more things. So you're going to hear, it's just madness in here. There's nothing in here. We're in a box. And thanks to Texas allergies, I'm dying. So hopefully this works out. The scratchy voice, all that. Yeah, it's been wild with the winds and the fire. And of course, we've already touched on all that. But anyway, so the other day, what led me to this, like I love to BS with y'all, what led me to this the other day, I was talking to family. And we were just discussing, grandparents. And I was thinking about my grandpa and the crazy stories in World War II. And then I realized how much I loved that time frame for movies. And I've discussed this with y'all before. I'm a big period piece junkie. And I think as you get older, of course, people, you get nostalgic as you get older and you just refer back to more historic things in history. But World War II is one of those things that's always been interesting to me. I don't know why. I'm still drawn to it. And like y'all know, I've been to the museum there in New Orleans and all that. So it's something, I guess because of my grandfather, right? It just, I'd always had, since I always think about him with it. And I miss him even to this day, right? I miss talking to him and all that. So it was just one of those things that I'm always ears up, radar on when it comes to that. And so I wanted to talk about some more stuff in there because I had found some things back in the day with some military stuff that I'd gone through, but I'd found a few things that made me wonder about, let me just read this to you. And then you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about. It's like, besides of this stuff, it's time slips. I want to know more about time slips that happened during combat. I wonder if there's ever been a time slip where people have vanished in the middle of a battle, right? and maybe had seen something else, or maybe they never came back. I don't know. I just, something about that. What is it? The Day After Tomorrow? What was that? The Tom Cruise movie, right? Where he keeps waking up when he dies, something like that kind of craziness. I've often wondered, but then I started finding this. This is a very interesting time slip around the siege of Leningrad. Now listen to this. It says, now this was a post that someone had made, and I want to read this to you. And it says, we have actually seen many such episodes while excavating World War II battlefields. Time mirages. Now, what this person talking about is an excavation on a Russian battlefield where they actually had an interaction with troops, they believe from then. It says, once I had seen with 4 of my friends a German advancing tank division in the outskirts of the Soviet Union near the siege of Leningrad. It said, we stood like stones, observed all of the battle between German and Soviet anti-tank platoons, which was eliminated by the majority of tanks. But some tanks also caught on fire and their crews were then shot by remaining infantry, and we noticed each gun remaining on the battlefield. And when it was over, we excavated 14 guns exactly the same that were shown to us, and even their disposition and direction was the same, like we had witnessed. Some were merely missing, actually 90% of them, but those which remained untouched were pointed in the same direction they were pointed in our mirage. A lot more of such events are barely visible, like shadows, but sometimes they become even touchable and reacting with the people. As once we were questioned by 2 horsemen about why our guns, which we brought with us, were in such conditions. We repaired many of the excavated ones and registered and took some for our own defense. And thank God that one of our guys, which likes to wear his Nazi uniform when excavating, because these horsemen were real. Yes, even when they suddenly came to us, the first thing that one of them did was extinguish our campfire and told us that we were fools because Germans will see us and kill us, like the partisans which he thought we were. And they also questioned us about our clothes and our vehicle. Also, thank God they seemed to be hurrying somewhere. So they, after 5 minutes, wished us luck and left. But when I realized that one of them was also willing to exchange my gun for his because I had a sniper rifle, an SVT-40, says which was so mint that even he, like me, liked it and said, talked about the guns here, says, look how the guns which you have to take from the enemy you kill should look like. But I was really shook and shocked by how he approached, so much that I only nodded. After all, having the proof that you are not mad, seeing that will be more sufficient than the loss of this rifle. And still the thing that I will keep forever is the 5-round stripper clip, says, with AP ammo, which one of them tossed to me because his thoughts was I needed them more because I was the sniper. So anyway, no one will probably believe that the simple Mosin Nagant stripper clip with AP rounds, armor piercing, came through 70 years by the time warp instead of being excavated, but I still know that it happened, and it makes it priceless for me. So it's broken down and translated from Russian, but now you kind of get the idea. Doing excavations like we had covered with Gettysburg and hearing the horses and the chatter and the gunfire and the cannon fire, and people have reported seeing all that. Now, these people had an interaction, which I don't understand. Hopefully, I don't know why you would want to wear his Nazi uniform in excavating. I don't know what that's all about. But anyway, apparently these guys were doing excavations and had interactions with what seemed to be, I guess they thought at first, spirits. Turned out to be real, like a time slip into that past. Now, we've covered the one that took place in Kentucky where they slipped back in the time, but imagine time slipping in Europe back into World War II. That would make, first of all, it'd be a great story, right? Let's be honest. That would be an awesome movie, great film, great series. But even It's just insane. Imagine that happening to you. And apparently, much like what he talked about, this person speaks of, they got lucky. The things that they had, the stuff they could trade or give away, or they believed that they were, turns out. But it's very odd. Still not what I was looking for, but then it sent me down another path. Get a load of this. I don't know if anyone believes me, but here's my story. So basically, during World War II, Drim Airfield near North Berwick in Scotland was used as an Air Force base for the British Army. I myself am Scottish, and all of my great uncles fought in the war, so this hits home. Basically, I know about Drim because my cousins live in the estate houses that were built on top of the old air base, and I still visit them to this day because it's only a half-hour drive from Edinburgh. I remember one evening I was staying the night there when I was about 10 years old, so this would be around 2012. I was thirsty, so I went downstairs to get some water. The estate houses were quite large, and all of a sudden I hear the roar of a Spitfire engine, a plane used by the British Army in World War II. And I get really scared because, well, at the time, I thought it was some weird storm or something. So I look out the window, and I kid you not, a Spitfire lands on a strip of runway that appeared from thin air. Somehow, I stay calm because I think it's a dream or something. And I look up and see planes littering the sky. I blink, and then it wasn't. As if the Spitfire and the runway disappeared. It was just as if it wasn't there anymore. I know it's hard to explain, but I thought I was having a dream, but I was so perplexed by it. This has seriously changed my outlook on reality and time. So there you go, folks. Getting up, 10-year-old you, look out the window, having to get you a little water in the morning, middle of the night, and you see a plane land. You hear it, and you see it. Now look, it's one thing to hear something, correct? It's another thing to see something. It's a whole different level when you hear and see the exact same thing. It usually means one thing. What's that? It's there, right? You can't really fool both at the same time. Well, you can, but you know what I'm talking about. Imagine this. So again, a very dramatic area, but it doesn't sound like the person slipped into time. It sounds like just maybe a spirit of something, some kind of time spirit caught up with them. So then I'm going to get into something a little wilder here, if you will. It says this is a recollection an aunt told me, my father's cousin, when she was around 11 years old. They used to live in a Norwegian version of a Native American teepee between two mountains. Now, here we go. There were two small towns located in each fjord. This was in the early 1970s, as she's 60 now. She was young, and they didn't have a car to travel with. And one day, her mother, my grandfather's sister, asked her if she would go down to the large marsh and cut some grass. We use the cut grass we put into our fur shoes to keep our feet warm and dry. Those grasses found in the forest marshes are the best to use. They packed some food, took their sickles, and walked down into the forest towards the marsh. Their dog was also really excited to come along, and they started cutting and gathering quite a lot of grass through the day. The midnight sun had started appearing when her mother decided, well, this was enough. They had packed a huge cloth piece and tied them between two trees. They decided to stay there for the night, so they lay under it, safe from all the blood-sucking insects. The dog was also sleeping with them. It says then all of a sudden, her mother sits upright. The dog also raises its ears. She asked her what's going on. Her mother tells her to be quiet. Then she hears it. Voices. They hear voices coming from the woods. They both go outside to check, but immediately when they go outside, it turns quiet again. They think that it was probably people fishing or drinking. They go back inside to fall asleep again, and then they just as about to fall, the voices come back, except this time they're closer. This time, they can hear that it's a language and that they don't understand it, So again, they go outside to check, and sure enough, the voices stop. So again, back inside, back to sleep. But she sees that her mother's not sleeping, so she waits, awake. And then again, they hear the voices. But they hear just one word, and they know what language they are speaking. That word was Hitler. Her mother told her to stay inside with the dog while she goes and checks. Sure enough, no one was there. Her mother comes inside again, says that there's no one there. She also says that it's just the marsh that's playing with them, and that they can sleep peacefully, so my aunt does fall asleep. The next morning, she wakes up and she looks at her mom. She sees that she hasn't slept all night and has been up. So they decide to quickly pack up and walk back home. So, in that place, we have huts now, which is above the marsh and the forest. There is a small bunker close to the road. It was used in World War II for something, and still stands till this day. So it sounds like the ghosts of maybe someone who perished in and around that bunker might have been speaking. You know, you don't know, but it does sound creepy. Now, we all know of those places that have the ghosts. I've talked about the ones here with the witch's tomb. We have all of that, right? Everybody hears the voices and all that. To me, I've heard it here in my own home, right? Like, it's not crazy to hear that. Unsettling, yes. Crazy, probably not. This one is one that's been around a while. I think y'all are going to enjoy this. It says, when I was in high school, I had a teacher who was in the 3rd Army during World War II. He was actually in the hospital ward with Patton when the guy was slapped. Worshipped the ground Patton walked on. When they were liberating the death camps, Mr. P was with Patton at Buchwald. Now, they went into one of the labs. Patton left sick. He couldn't take it. Mr. P walked out with him. He gave Mr. P his famous ivory-handled pistol and bullets and told him to go back and put them out of their misery. What they found, according to Mr. P, had once been human. He went in and did what Patton told him to do. He walked out and started drinking that night. He drank until 1970 or so, sobering up when he began teaching school. He's the reason I became active in state politics and became a writer. I asked him about what he had found that day. He said he would never speak of it. It was too vile and too horrible. Patton couldn't take it. From what I gather, they then destroyed everything they could find, including notes and records. Patton did not want a repeat of this experimentation. I never thought much about it until I heard a discussion about the Dulce base. See, I live in Lincoln County, near Ruidoso Downs, here in New Mexico. So there is so much military going on here, you finally give up ever wondering about it. I never even thought about this, but Mr. P said that Patton stressed the fact that he did not want anyone coming across the records to repeat experimentations. Is that what they were doing in Dulce? This just leads to any number of questions, including the death of Patton. Mr. P swore he was murdered. The state was basically on lockdown during and after World War II due to the bomb, Los Alamos, and of course all of that. I've never given the Dulce-based story any credibility, but I could see the possibility of someone having rescued other records and continued the horror. According to one of my sources, the majority of 911 calls in the Ruidoso Downs police are dealing with our friendly, local Bigfoot. My neighbor has seen it twice. It prowls around our condos, even freaked her out one night. Has freaked out a friend. Something's tried to open my front door. When I looked out the peephole, there was just a huge dark hand covering it, having opened my storm door, which I now always lock. A few nights after that, something urinated all over my door. This has happened several times, and it urinates a good 5 foot off the ground. No one wants to talk about it. I finally managed to get confirmation that one of the top state hunters in this area is trying to track one. We have very strange stuff going on here, redacted. So, someone, apparently maybe into politics, had a little run-in with a high school teacher, and the high school teacher is apparently Mr. P here, knows this person, got him involved, apparently shared some things with him. And now this person's having some second thoughts about the Dulce base, the whole idea of stuff, which, yeah, no joke. Again, if you've seen any of those, like we've talked about all the movies for World War II, the idea of some type or some sort of hybrid program, some sort of experimentation program, knowing what we know now, that doesn't seem too far-fetched whatsoever. At least not in my opinion. I mean, it seems always like something that could have happened, and who knows what other countries have done and jumped for. But I've wondered too, like we talked about with the sightings of things seen in the sky in North America and in Europe and all around during the wartime. This is a story that I find interesting, and I think you're going to like. It actually took place near Skinwalker Ranch, but it took place way back in the 40s. When the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, my father, an employee, a teacher of the then called U.S. Indian Service, now called the Bureau of Indian Affairs, went to volunteer, intending to enlist in the U.S. Army. He was marked 4F because of a noticeable limp he had acquired when, as a 12-year-old boy, fell off of the high porch at my grandparents' house, located in east central Oklahoma. There he'd broken his leg very badly, and he had to learn to walk with it all over again. Because he could not get into the service, he signed up for a program that allowed him to volunteer to take the place of another federal employee who would be going overseas. Dad was notified that he would relocate for the duration to the federal boarding school for Indian children at White Rock Indian School, very near the Ute Indian Reservation at Fort Duchesne, Utah. I was about 6 months old at the time and, of course, remember virtually nothing of the entire experience. My mother had been a U.S. Indian Service nurse in Phoenix, but there was no open positions for her at Fort Duchesne, so she became a housewife. And from time to time, she would take me out in my stroller to have a little small meadow close to the school, and we would have a picnic. When I was in my 30s, my mother told me a story. One day, when we were having our little picnic lunch, it couldn't have been much of a lunch as there was a heavy wartime food rationing in effect, a shiny object flew in from the west, made a circuit around the little meadow, hovered for a few minutes, then flew away to the east. I was surprised. I asked her why she had never told me the story before. She said she had never considered the incidents of much significance. She could have been right, but I asked her to draw the object from memory. She drew a circular globe. That's it, a circular globe. I asked her if the object did anything but fly through the air. She tried to explain that it made some kind of jittery or shaky movements, but she really couldn't describe what the movement was like. I asked if the object could have been carried by the wind, but she didn't remember it being particularly windy that day. So, it circled the little meadow, then flew away. The incident was several years before Kenneth Arnold's famous 1947 sighting of 9 shiny objects that flew in tandem and skipped like saucers as they flew through the sky near Mount Rainier in Washington. Now, years later, I met a man, a police officer, who had worked at Fort Duchesne, and he told of an incident where he was with his family and they were all laying out in the lawn one evening, like families do, having their soft drinks and lemonades, when a shiny object overflew their home and stopped and then shot straight up. The officer couldn't identify what the object was, but it was enough to send the family scurrying into the house. The officer said he and his family didn't go out for the rest of the evening and even held off a few weeks after that. Well, after my mom told me the story of the meadow sighting, I gave it some thought. At least 2 possibilities came to me. As I said, Kenneth Arnold hadn't yet had his sighting, but I learned even in those pre-internet days that the Fort Duchesne area was kind of notorious for sightings of that kind. Or there was the other possibility, that during the war, the Japanese had made and released a number of Fugo hydrogen-filled balloons carrying incendiary devices from the Japanese home islands, hoping the balloons would make their way via the jet stream, land in America's forest lands and start forests or wildfires, or even perhaps kill someone. Now, whether that shiny object my mother saw was flying saucer or a Fugo bomb or something else, I certainly can't say. But here's what I can say. That little meadow is within 2 or 3 miles of the infamous Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if the paranormal experiences and phenomena experienced in that ranch area were happening back as far as World War II, but one certainly happened nearby on a picnic day in 1944. JP. Now that is one wild story, JP. Thank you. Here's another one that a fellow named Nick wrote in. My parents grew up in Italy during World War II. Superstition and supernatural beliefs played a big part in their childhood. Now, times were tough during the war. Hunger and even death played a huge part in their lives. The first story was told to me by my mother, one of the many ghost stories she would recount about spirits during the war. And funny that she has always had not one ghost encounter since she's been in the United States. Now, as a rule, when battles were imminent in my family's area, either German or American soldiers would come into the village and force march the inhabitants out of the town before the battle commenced. Mom told me the Germans and the Americans were the nicest troops, others not so much. One day, a German battalion arrived in her village of Montoro in order to evacuate the civilians. A small garrison was at my mother's home. One German, a particularly handsome, blonde-haired, blue-eyed soldier, gave the children of the house candy and began to show them his medals and things. He pointed to his watch that his grandfather had worn during his tour in World War I. It had kept him safe, and it would keep his grandson safe, my mother told. The troops marched the village inhabitants out of the village into a reasonably safe zone. After 2 days, the villagers were told it was safe for them to return to their homes and try to reclaim any valuables that might have not been destroyed during said battle. My mom's family arrived at the destroyed shack and tried to salvage whatever they could. In the field, they saw the barn door laying down on the field, obviously over top of something. It did not lay level. A couple of the other boys lifted the door and peered underneath. There were 3 German soldiers lying dead. My mother was shocked to see that one of them was the handsome blonde soldier. He was dead, and he had one leg missing. She noticed right away that he still had that expensive-looking watch on. Now, Italian peasants always looked for items belonging to dead soldiers, which could be bartered for the very scarce food items. This time, however, she left the watch on his wrist, possibly because of her schoolgirl crush. Her family gathered what they could and started down the road to find somewhere safe to stay. A little ways up the road, my mom got a feeling that other refugees were catching up to them. And as they got closer, my mom turned to greet them. To her surprise, she saw not refugees, but 3 German soldiers. But they didn't look right. They were kind of transparent. As they got closer and passed, she was shocked to see that one of the soldiers was none other than her handsome blonde German friend. They passed her, and her soldier friend turned, smiled at her, and clearly said grazie. They continued down the road and slowly disappeared. My mother was shocked. When she found her tongue, she asked her family if they saw the soldiers. They said nothing. My mom saw a lot of things during the war she couldn't explain. There was a lot of death, destruction, and misery around. I figure that has to have something to do with the high spirit activity. So maybe that's kind of like maybe a good omen. Maybe that's what the soldiers were going ahead to do. I don't know. That is such a wild story. It's unsettling. It's sad. Anything that's based around that. But I want to leave you with this. This is a story that I really, really enjoy. If nothing else, it's for the idea. Like I said, right? I like the idea of this, like to be a show, to be something along. And I know they've made movies about it. Just This is one of the things I like. It was June 1944. A few days after D-Day, and somewhere in western France, a group of soldiers were ordered to watch a hill. They were in a jeep equipped with a mounted .50 caliber rifle. As they arrived on the scene, they found 3 dead German soldiers who had been torn to pieces. Body parts were everywhere. According to the witness, it almost looked as if a bomb had gone off in the area. The men got out and looked at the bodies. It was around dusk. As they inspected the area, the men heard 5 long howls. They then saw movement on the hill and quickly retreated back to the jeep. They then watched as 5 bipedal canine-like creatures walked over the hill and made their way down to the dead soldiers. They proceeded to devour them, chewing through bone as if it was nothing. Somehow, the creatures never took notice of the Americans in the jeep. That is, until one of the men attempted to load his gun, which resulted in the creatures looking in their direction. They began making their way towards them. The men in the jeep proceeded to open fire on the creatures, who were ripped apart under the barrage of bullets. The witness estimated that over 1,000 rounds were fired at them, and it was now nightfall. Thinking that the situation was under control, the men proceeded to the top of the hill, where they remained talking until morning. When they went back to the area the next morning to inspect the creatures in a daylight setting, they were astonished to find there was nothing there. No creatures and no dead soldiers. The only thing they found were numerous large dog-like tracks, as if a cleanup crew had come and scrubbed the area. The men assumed that there were more of these creatures roaming this area, and they felt they were in danger, and they left quickly. This story was told by my grandfather just prior to his passing. I hope you enjoyed those stories as much as I did. A little unsettling tales from the time of World War II, folks. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap this baby up. You're listening to Expanded Perspectives. We're back.
Yes.
Here we go. Creepy World War II stuff. Well, and it's not all like during World War II, but it is all tied in to World War II stuff.
I love those stories.
Well, it's one of your favorite eras, the same as mine. And we had talked a few episodes ago. You're going to end up going to New Orleans as you go to the beach, but you're going to end up going by there to go to the World War II Museum, aren't you?
That's right, in June. In fact, we just lengthened the trip because my wife's never been to New Orleans. I have several times. Mm-hmm. We were just going to pass through, stay the night there, get up in the morning, look at some stuff, and continue on. Well, she had planned like 8 things. And I'm like, well, we can't do that in 4 hours. So now we're going to stay in New Orleans like 2 days.
Perfect.
Then go. And yeah, because she had like a list of, she wants to go this, she wants to do this tour, do that. And I'm like, are you crazy?
You can't do all that.
Yeah, you don't want to run around.
Yeah, for real.
So yes, I'm going to go there. I have not been to that museum, but I'm looking forward to it. In fact, I'm looking more forward to that than some Museum of Death or something my wife's taking me to.
Here's what you do. Just have her leave you there. You're not going to be able to see it all.
And my
just
dad's
have her
going to
leave
be
you
with
there.
us. So
just perfect.
Me and Pop, he loves that stuff.
Oh,
so.
dude, you could literally spend 2 days in there with no problem.
Well, maybe I'll see if I can get my mom to go with Lee, and then me and my dad.
I'm telling you, that's the move.
Yeah, very cool.
That is the move. But yeah, other than that, man, a little World War II crazy stuff. We got some stories. If you have any more crazy bag, dwindy, anything, any kind of crazy trash bag morph sightings, send it in. It doesn't matter what it is, because we may be onto something here again, folks.
Cam's new band, the Trash Bag Dwindies.
It is, yeah.
Aren't you guys looking for a drummer?
It's a hell yeah, Cam Hell and the Trash Bag Dwindies.
So if you're interested in joining Cam's band, you might hit him up. Expanded Perspectives at yahoo.com.
Hell yeah. Oh, and so this weekend, well, it's not even this weekend. This week, my wife had to teach a class Right? So I had to take her up there because she still is non-weight bearing because of her foot surgery that she had. She actually tore her ankle and toes up real bad, breaking her foot off in my ass for not getting enough stuff done around here. Had to have full surgery done on it. So that's what's going on now. But anyway, she's fine. Just non-weight bearing for quite some time. Anyway, while she was doing that, I snuck off to Denton, Texas to Reaper Miniatures.
Yeah? Tell everybody what that is.
For those that don't know, if you're into Dungeons and Dragons and into miniatures and Warhammer, all of that, you might know what Reaper Miniatures is. And they are, of course, like anything else, like WizKids or any of the other companies that make minis. But their headquarters, their main house is in Denton. And so I got to go there and meet the guys and hang out and walk around in the whole place because they have a little game store in their main warehouse. Now you can buy it online, and there's a lot of other people carry their miniatures and their paints and brushes and all of that stuff. So like I said, you can go look, but I got to go and hang out and was invited to come up there and do some painting because they have some paint stuff that goes on every weekend. Then they're going to have a thing called ReaperCon in September. And I'm trying to talk Kyle into going. I'm going to go for the whole time, but it's going to be there in Denton. And all it is over Labor Day weekends, like 4 days or something of nothing but miniature painting, D&D games, Warhammer games, ReaperCon. So
get your paint on. Cam's going to be using his Kitadel and his Vallejo.
That's right.
Paint kit, all that stuff.
My Seidel paints.
Kitadel. Vallejo. You ever see those people say that?
Hell yeah. That's the kind of paints I've been using.
Well, you drink Baja.
That's right. Hell yes. Now you're talking. So yeah, I got to go do that. It was really fun to go see all that stuff. It's a bit overwhelming when you see rows of miniatures.
You know what's cool is just, even if you're not even into it, like I am impressed whenever I come across something that I wasn't even aware was a thing.
Yeah.
And then you see the level of work people put into it. Like whether it's, I'm sure you can go to somewhere where there's model trains, and these guys have dedicated nothing but 10 years of their life making the most authentic model train you could possibly imagine. Now, look, I'm not into model trains, but I do admire the level of dedication. That's what I feel like when I see these miniature painted things. Like 2 years ago, I didn't even know this was a thing, and now I can't believe there's a whole industry and world-renowned artists that are in it. And for whatever reason, a lot of people in Spain are into it.
Man, you Spanish folks have got some talents, man. There's a lot of Spanish, German, European. There's a lot of those painters out there that it's like we've said before. I guess miniature painting has been a big thing over there and not here in the States so much. Over there more, but like I didn't have any idea what a Golden Demon Award is. So for those of you listening don't know what Golden Demon is, it's done by Warhammer, and it's like the best of the best painters, and they have these miniature painting competitions. Like it's crazy, like I said. But I'm into anything that people are into. Like if you are really into, like we talked about disc golf or anything abstract, if you're into abstract soap carving and you go all out, I'm down.
I'm not, like I said, I'm not into it or necessarily wanting to do it, but I admire looking at somebody who's really taken the time, dedicated a lot of time to getting good at whatever that craft is. I think because we live in a modern world where everything around us is not handmade anymore. Everything's made in automated factories. Everything is plastic. Everything, so when you see something handmade,
it means more to me.
It makes a difference.
Yeah, 100%.
If you ever go to like the Scarborough Fair or whatever, and there's guys blowing glass. I don't want to get into blowing glass, but it's cool.
We need to go this year. It ought to be coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, I think they had it last year, but the year prior it was closed down because of COVID.
We need to go.
Now that war started, that's like there's nobody talking about COVID no more. So how quickly did that go away?
Yeah, right.
Just overnight, it's gone.
Didn't you go? Did y'all go a couple of years ago, or did you go last year?
We didn't go last year. We wanted to, and then I think it was baseball. That's normally what interfered.
Well, we're going this year. We'll get them to, if nothing
it's
else.
Awesome. My favorite, one of my favorite parts, not just the cool costumes.
The sarsaparilla.
That's
the
cool.
homemade root beer.
My favorite part is like the raptor show, the ones with the birds. Like they have like hawks.
Dude, that was your favorite part of the zoo when we were kids.
Different owls and eagles and stuff. I just love that stuff. To watch an osprey swoop down with its talons.
Is that what you're going to do when you become an old man? You're going to become a falconer?
I would love that. Like, are there guys that go and train them to kill whitetail?
Did you see how you have to work? You have to level up to do it.
I know. It's a dedication.
It's a lifestyle from this moment forward if you're going to do it.
And I think if you want to get a license from like the state of Texas to raise like a red-tailed hawk or something, like you have to go through a bunch of stuff. They don't just hand them out. And then you're like legally responsible for that thing for like 15 years.
You have to do now this has been years since I looked, but there's like an apprenticeship where you have to go and apprentice under another handler and all this stuff. It's interesting. I don't want to do it, but again,
I don't want to do it either, but it's cool.
love people that are that into it. I love watching.
I think every time it's a romantic idea. I think of Mongols on the steppe.
Oh yeah,
using those things, right?
Yeah,
pretty cool. It's definitely cooler than raising like pigeons, clapping and they turn over and stuff. I mean, come on, a raptor's way cooler than that.
That's true. A raptor's way cooler.
Well, if you've got any cool stories you want to share with Cam and I or the listeners of the show, please email the show expandedperspectives@yahoo.com, or you can call it in 888-393-2783. 888-393-BRUD. Let's not forget about the Murder Diaries podcast.
Yeah.
They're pretty cool. Go
Natalie
check them
and Paige.
out. That's right. Go check that out. And microdosegummies.com. Don't forget about the code EXPANDED, EXPANDED, to get free shipping and 30% off your first order. That's about all the time we have for this episode. Till next time, folks, I'm Kyle. He's Cam.
Peace, y'all.